Hi, I'm Deirdre Van Nest, and you're listening to the Crazy Good Talks podcast, the place to be if you're a mission-driven financial professional or entrepreneur wanting actionable strategies to make an impact with your words and ideas. I think you'd agree that it takes courage to face a loss. Now imagine a loss that will rob you of the ability to speak and will ultimately take your life. I want to introduce you to my guest today, Tim Schut, who is facing that future, his future, with courage and grace. Tim has spent his career in the financial service and real estate industries, but most importantly, he is the father of 3 amazing girls. He and his wife are high school sweethearts. I love that because my parents were also high school sweethearts. And he loves to collect toy tractors. I am so honored he agreed to share his journey with us and what he intends to do with his time ahead. So welcome, Tim.
Thanks, Deirdre.
Yeah, no, Tim, you and I met at an event last year, and you had the lovely job of basically carting me around. Right. I was a speaker at the event, and somehow you got probably voluntold. But you're so nice. Knowing you probably raised your hand and said, I'll do it, to pick me up at the airport. And I got in pretty late that night, and you picked me up with one of your great daughters. So that was awesome to be able to meet her. And then you brought me to my hotel. You picked me up the next day. You took me to the event. You even took me to see Sioux Falls. And gave me a tour, which I so appreciated. And while you were driving me to the airport, you said, Deirdre, when I speak, I'm having trouble getting the words out. You're a speaking coach. Like, what do you think's going on? And after, some back and forth, I think you and I both agreed that it was probably nerves, but it wasn't nerves, was it?
No, it was not.
No. Can you share with us what is it? What did you find out?
Well, let me first back up to June of 2020. I met you October of 2020. So I noticed I was having trouble getting words out. That's just not me. So I asked my dentist buddy, does this have anything to do with my mouth, my tongue, my teeth? And he said, no, you need to get that checked. So then I went to see my regular doctor. And he prescribed speech therapy and a brain MRI. The brain MRI came back clear. 6 months later, we thought it was just stress. I left my job because of it. It turns out 6 months later, I was referred onto neurology. Another brain MRI, clear. They tested me for everything under the sun. MS, Lyme disease, we were pulling all the stops. So my neurologist has been doing this since 1976, which she was the year I was born. So when he stumped, I was concerned. So they sent me to Mayo for ALS testing. My original appointment was August 17th. I called every day at 8 a.m. to see if they had any cancellations. June 21st, they had a cancellation, so I was able to get in on June 21st. They sent me to Mayo for ALS testing. 7:30 that morning, my wife and I met with the ALS doc. They ran me through a series of tests, and they're like, I don't think you have ALS, but we're going to continue to do the testing for ALS. They said, we want to get you in front of our speech pathologist, She happened to have an opening at 9:30 that Monday morning. Within 40 minutes, she had me diagnosed. Really. primary progressive apraxia of speech. Let's take that word by word. Primary means it affects the speech first. Progressive means it only gets worse. Apraxia is, you know what to say, it just doesn't come out. So PPAOS. And so we got out there about 10:30. My wife and I did an early lunch. And then we read up the disease and just went in their car and just cried.
You know, there's so much here, and this is very tender. So I appreciate you being willing to go on this journey with me this morning. You know, speech, I believe, is one of those things that most people take for granted, right? I mean, it's something that we've been doing before we probably had conscious memory. We just started doing it, and no one had to, like, it's not like riding a bike, right? Where someone, like, you have a moment where someone taught you and you could not learn to ride the bike. For most people, you just learn to speak and you think it's something you'll always have. And so as someone who loves words and loves speaking, like, it's like, what is this like, Tim, to think about and to go through losing that ability to express yourself in a spoken way?
Well, I've often said speech is my superpower. Optimism is going to be my new superpower. This is a really rare disease. In fact, it was way less than 1 million. It was way less than 1 million. It was discovered in 2010 at Mayo Clinic. So what they found is they had 37 people in a study, but 12 of them were totally aware of what they were saying. The other 25 had aphasia. So they realized that apraxia, primary progressive apraxia of speech, was a different subset of dementia. So I'm one of 28 people in the study. I'm the third youngest one. They've been studied this since 2010, and there's been less than 100 participants in the study. That's how rare it is.
So what would you say to someone who isn't facing what you're facing, like knowing what you know now and how speech is sacred, right? Like how this is a gift of speech. What would you say to someone who maybe doesn't look at it that way?
I don't know. At least I have time. Car accident victims and heart attack victims don't have any time to say goodbye. That's where I consider it a blessing that I have this lead time to do voice banking, etc. I get record the night before Christmas. I bought those recordable books so that I can give them to my daughters and then my grandkids, which I won't likely meet.
I really, so one of the things, you're making me think of something that I did early on, and maybe we can answer the question this way in terms of not taking this for granted, is, my mom died in a car accident, which, and so we didn't have that lead time. And so one of the things that I did when my kids were young is I did what you're now doing, is I recorded voice messages for them about how I was feeling about them and the things that were going on. And I have these tapes. I'm like, I hope these will last, these little tiny micro cassette tapes that they can hear. So what I love about what you're saying, Tim, is whether or not you're facing something that Tim is now facing, or you ever go through like what happened in my family, like start recording stuff for your legacy, right? Start recording your voice. I mean, I think about how cool it would be, Tim, if I could hear my mom's voice right now. Like I'd give anything to hear her voice. Right. And so I love this idea of you recording for your kids. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here, was like, I want this to be part of your legacy that you leave for your kids and your wife and your grandkids, but you don't have to be going through what you're going through to leave that. So, if you're listening today, I want to encourage you, start recording your voice. The people in your life who matter to you and who you matter to will be so blessed to have this one day, because all of us are going to die, right? None of us is going to get out of this life alive. And so to have that, and I love The Night Before Christmas. I know exactly what you're talking about with those books. I know you've been on other podcasts. What are some other things you're doing, or what else are you thinking about doing to preserve your spoken memory?
Well, voice banking, which I already discussed, that's where you download my voice into the cloud. And then when I'm unable to speak, they give me a tablet. Then I can talk in my own voice, which is amazing.
So let me ask you this. So you're voice banking. So it's like, when you first get maybe your iPhone and you're programming Siri, you have to say things. Is that what that's like? Like you're saying certain words and phrases, the cloud or the computer software is capturing it. And then when you can't speak, you're going to have a tablet. How will that work? Like, do you write it and then it says it out loud? Are you tapping on things? Like, can you just talk to us about that technology?
I demoed it. It has push buttons. It has words, and the home screen is the most commonly used words. And my understanding is that when you type on your iPhone, it has predictive capabilities. So it knows what you're going to say.
And then it will say something like it's audible to whomever.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
That's
in my amazing.
Own voice.
In your own voice.
Yes.
So you could go out and, meet someone for coffee and have a conversation. Like you and I could have this conversation.
Right.
And then I'll ask you a question like this, and then it would take you a moment to answer it, but then it would come out in your own voice.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to try that.
Yes.
All right. I don't want that day to come. I'll tell you that. But when it does, if you're open, I'd be interested in having that kind of conversation with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I love this idea of voice banking. I love this idea of preserving your voice for your legacy. Let's shift gears for a moment, if we could. You talked about your superpower, and I listened to that podcast. So can you remind me the name of the podcast, and we'll put it in the show notes?
Lead More with John T. Mayer. Lead More.
Okay. So you talked about the superpower, and talk about optimism as a new superpower. And I would love for you, if you would give any inspiration you could to someone who's listening right now and going through something really tough, because you're clearly in a place where this is tough, right? And you're sitting here smiling, and I can only imagine that that's not easy to do, but maybe it is. I don't know. Give us some hope here, if you would.
I'm just a naturally positive person, and people have asked me if I've gotten angry, and I really haven't. That day will come. When I frustrated, particularly when I can't get my words out. So I spoke to leadership of South Dakota, and I was amazed. This lady stood up and she said, "You're a true inspiration. I would run and hide and feel sorry for myself." And she was essentially she would become a hermit. hermit.
So what keeps you from becoming that hermit? What helps you to stay positive?
I try to schedule something that I look forward to every day. So tonight, I watch my daughters play basketball, and then we have a work holiday party. So
I'm waiting
and
for you
I'm
to say
looking
in the
forward to
podcast.
right. I'm looking forward to the podcast too.
Okay, good.
Right.
No, you know what? I love that. I love that. I have had years ago, I had I've had several dark periods in my life, but you know, in my early 20s and then in the kind of later teen years, I definitely had years of experiencing and struggling with depression, and that idea of looking for something every day that you can look forward to is so important. I mean, that's so if you're in a place right now and you're struggling, you know, I don't know what's going on in your life, but if you're struggling, I think Tim's advice is really sound of like, what are some, even if nothing sounds that exciting, like what are some things that you do enjoy? It can be as simple as like a cup of tea, right? But something that makes you feel good is super, super important. Okay. What are some other things? Cause you know, I know we had a text exchange going back and forth but I also listened to you on the podcast that we referenced. You were talking about, I think, you know, really living more in the present moment. And that's something that everybody talks about and everybody wants. And I'm working on that myself, but like, what does that look like?
I used to be a financial planner for 16, 17 years. And I was always looking to the future. That's been the biggest mental shift for me, just to appreciate every day, because they only gave me 10 to 15 years to live.
What is that like? I mean, we are all faced with our mortality, right? Like you said, 10, you say 10 to 15 years. And I know my heart sinks. I'm sure, you know, if you're listening, your heart sinks, but quite honestly, like I might only have one more hour. I mean, I hope that's not the case, right? But we don't know. I mean, I think about my mom, Tim,
Right.
and the words that she said literally 30 seconds before she died was turned to my dad and said, you know, I want to talk with you about what I want to do for the rest of my life. And she was gone 30 seconds later. So we don't know. But when you do know, I guess it just seems more close to home when someone's given you that number, right? You get that number from a doctor. What it kind of forces you to look at life differently, even though we probably should be looking at it that way from the beginning anyway. Is there a certain way that you set your mind each day, or do you have to continually go, okay, wait, let's stay focused right here, right now. I'm going to look at this green plant, or I'm just going to enjoy the taste of the food. Like, is there anything in particular you do to stay focused in the present moment?
No, I'm just wired that way. I'm always been a positive person. So it's tough. So I just look forward to every day. That's advice I can give.
Yeah, it sounds like when this happened, you got this diagnosis. It sounds like you just made a conscious shift to say, okay, this is my new reality, and I'm gonna stop thinking so much about the long-term future, and I'm gonna really focus on today.
I've had a lot of feedback from people. For example, one woman, quit her job because of me. I inspired her to quit her job. She'd been there for 15 years. And my diagnosis reprioritized her life. Another guy who went to high school with said, this is gonna make me a better dad and husband. And for those stories, that just, I'm doing the right thing. It just melts my heart.
Yeah, when your pain and tragedy can be used to better someone else's life, it's kind of the only thing that makes sense. Yeah, and I can see how what you're going through and what you've been so willing to share with people is absolutely changing lives. So what do you see is like what's been different? Where were you, say, a year ago, and where are you now? You said you left your job. What are some things that you're now doing that maybe you thought, I have to wait 15 to 20 years to do this, but now you actually get to do them now?
So we moved to the farmhouse. We're gonna do a major addition and remodel on the farmhouse. So the kids go to the school in Chester, which is where my wife and I graduated from. The community has just been the best. They've embraced the Scut girls, embraced them. I had one teacher say that they wouldn't even know that they're new students because they fit right in. Yeah, that's a huge sigh of relief. So
I'm smiling because when we met and you were taking me around, we were both kind of talking about the future, and you said, oh, one day we're going to move like out of town and we're going to move into the farmhouse. Like that was a dream and a goal that was down the pike.
right.
And so I'm thrilled for you that
Right.
that's something that you get to do now. And it really makes me think about how many of us
Right.
think things have to be in the future. And I think we think that way. And I can speak for myself because we do think we have all this time, right? But why don't we start looking at, well, like, why does that have to wait? Why
Yeah.
can't I make this happen now or sooner than 5
Right.
years from now? So if you're listening today, I really think this is another lesson that we can take from Tim, is like, take a look at your life and match it up against the things you value, and don't put off making things happen that could happen today, right? That would be better for you and your family.
The doctors at Mayo said, don't wait to travel. Because we're taking the entire family to Turks and Caicos. A buddy of mine has set up a GoFundMe page for travel. So my wife and I are planning a trip to Europe in the coming year. So we're just checking off all the bucket list items.
I love that. Will you send us the link to the GoFundMe page so we can put it in the show notes? And I would love to participate in that personally. So send me the link.
Yes.
And if you would send me the link to the podcast too, that we're referencing,
okay,
just so it's easy
okay,
to grab, that would be great. Okay. So I would love to wrap this up by asking you, in this idea of your legacy, right? What do you want to say to your daughters and your future grandchildren? Like, what piece of wisdom or love do you want to say to them?
That's a tough question. I'm writing my family book right now, my story. I just want them to know that their dad and grandpa was someone special. My dream is, my legacy dream is to have people say their lives were better because Tim Schut was in it.
Well, I can definitely attest that you are someone special and that my life is better because you are in it. So thank you so much for being my friend when I didn't even know you and you didn't even know me, and you volunteered to take me around, and just the generosity of spirit that you had and showing me around and making me feel comfortable. And then thank you so much for being willing to share your heart and your journey with me and with my listeners.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Crazy Good Talks podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered in this podcast represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Accelerated Performance, LLC. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only.